It's great to see
Oh,
you again. This is another great film. I loved it. Hadn't read the book, um, but I was curious about it. Had you read the book, or did you kind of just get a copy of the screenplay when they started working on it, or what was like your in on this?
well, Tessa Ross called me about the producer 5, 6 years ago, and because we had looked for a movie that we could do together for a couple of years and hadn't found one, and said, you know what, I might have a movie that you might like. And I said, who's writing it, or who do you want to write it? And there wasn't a script yet, and she said Peter Straughan. And I love just Peter. I love Peter's work. He did like Tinker Tailor and so forth. It's always like a great story at the heart of it, like in a way a great thriller and Tinker, but also with a fantastic character at the center of it that I can very much relate to. In this case, it was Rafe's sort of inner journey of doubt that once I read the screenplay, that really hooked me, where I thought I really can sort of creep into this person's mind, get a great actor to do it, and sort of take the audience along on his sort of intellectual process of coping with this. And so I thought it would be an interesting intellectual and emotional process. And I thought whatever Rafe goes through, it very much spoke to me. And so it felt like it's a movie I can have something to say with.
Had they already thrown out Rafe's name as playing the lead in this? His name was already in. Is it already in your mind as you were reading it, or not even?
No, the character in the book is Italian. In
Oh,
the first draft of the script, he was Italian, but we never thought he needed to be Italian. I mean, obviously, it takes place in Rome and so forth, and a lot of cardinals are Italian, but they come from the world over. So we looked the world over, or we sort of kept an open mind while we developed the script. And we didn't decide anything for the first year, or didn't really talk about it much for the first year, until suddenly this character came more become clearer and clearer to us. He was quite a quiet man. He was more in the second row rather than sort of an alpha who wanted to be Pope. He's the manager, the reluctant manager in the background, who on top of it has doubts and doesn't even want to be there. And so it just felt like you needed someone who can express all of that with his eyes, like who would take us into his sort of inside, into this soul, and reveal what he's thinking. And Rafe is just someone who can beautifully. Suddenly I woke up. I thought, who we should send it to? It's Rafe,
hmm.
because he tells us what he thinks with his eyes.
It's interesting because the cast is again it's mostly men, except for the Isabella Rossellini and the nuns. I mean, casting all these different roles and all these different international roles. I mean, did you just like go down the list and just start building around Rafe, or how do you like find some of these actors?
Yeah, you start with Rafe, and then to be honest, we were super lucky because every actor that we sent the script to said yes. I don't think I had any turndowns, like just because they really, first of all, they really like their stories, their arcs, their characters that they had to play. And they really, Rafe is a sort of a great partner to have. They all want to play with Rafe, because they know he's a good actor. And so Stanley Tucci knows him, and he immediately said, like, "Oh, I want to do this. This is interesting. I could have some scenes with Rafe and play his friend, and it just felt like he could have something to show in this movie, by charting this character's arc. Same with Isabella and John Lithgow was one where for a moment it felt like his timing wouldn't work out, and I was panicking and couldn't come up with a different name because somehow you want to build it, you want to put these photographs up on the wall and start making them feel all different from each other. They're all sort of, Stanley is so opposite to Rafe, and John just felt like sort of like a different edition, and Lucien as well. And I was lucky that they all sort of flocked to their roles.
Hmm. Was any role that was just tougher to cast than the others?
Yeah. There's a cardinal who has a small role. He's called Cardinal Benitez.
Hmm.
He has a pivotal role, and that needed to be someone who is unknown. I wanted him, I didn't want you with associations of, oh, I've seen this actor before in this movie. I wanted you to discover him so that, just like the Cardinals, he's a surprise character, basically, that appears. And he has a final speech, a final scene with Rafe, And I wanted you and I to be able to look into that person's eyes and believe what he says. And what he
Mm.
says is not so easy, and it's not so easy to believe. And you just need to be able to, there needs to be a gentleness, a sensitivity, a kindness, an openness to this person that makes you believe that this could be true, that this could be his life. Whether it's true or not doesn't really matter, but in his real life, but sort of it's like that he says it and that I believe it. And oh yeah, I could see that. And that is very, very hard to pull off. So it took a long time to find Carlos.
Mm. And people who watch this movie after seeing All Quiet will think, "Oh, this is a much smaller scale movie with just a bunch of," but it's not. I feel like having the Vatican taking place in the Vatican adds this enormous scale to it. And I'm hoping to talk to Susie Davies. I spoke to her last year for Saltburn, and she's amazing. She's an amazing production designer. I mean,
Right.
how do you guys just build all of this somewhere and just found pictures of the Vatican? How do you guys pull that off?
We found a lot of locations in and around Rome. There's actually, I mean, there is a lot of locations in the film. There are a lot of locations, and it's sort of a puzzle piece because you obviously can't shoot in the Vatican, and a lot of these locations have restrictions, and a lot of them don't look right. So I really pieced it together. This room there, this room there. We traveled half through Rome to shoot in this street and so forth, and then we eventually couldn't find, obviously we had to build the Sistine Chapel to shoot in it. And then, so we built that. And then we couldn't find what I felt was needed, sort of the opposite to this ecclesiastical building, needed to be sort of a more modern, colder, sort of aseptic kind of clinical building, the Casa Santa Marta, where they stayed, to create a contrast, a visual contrast, and to be able to create the sense of claustrophobia, that Rafe goes into this room, the doors close, it does, all the air gets sucked out, and you hear nothing except the hum of the neo lights in his breath. And so we had to build that too. So we built, those were the two big locations we built.
Yeah, I like how matter of factly you said, "Oh, we have to build a Sistine Chapel, of course." Like us.
Yeah,
Of course you did. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Now, did they have any kind of like drone footage of the outside of Vatican or something like that you could use as well? Or I mean, how are they able to like get the exteriors as well? Which is some very, very known locations too.
I didn't show any exteriors. I didn't
Oh,
feel exteriors were necessary. Like I felt it's the movie's called Conclave. It takes place behind closed doors. So it felt like, to get the effect of, you know, going inside, being locked away from the world, and then Rafe sitting in his room at the very end, having gone through this journey, and that this really lands. The window opens, the shutters open, he opens it, he lets the air back in, he lets the light back in. This has to really land. For that to really land, you can't really use that beforehand throughout the
mm,
2 hours. So I really, the movie is mostly interior,
mm.
if not all interior.
Now, you've shown the movie at a couple festivals now. I'm curious, have you noticed like are people who have more faith or less faith? Are any people who are more who enjoy it more than others? I mean, there are people who are. Have you met any Catholics who are just like really kind of more fascinated by it than others? Or
No, the movie is not first of all, it's not a takedown of the Catholic Church.
sure.
So whether you're Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, or, Buddhist, that doesn't really matter. People enjoy the movie, it seems. And so it's not a takedown. So Catholics usually don't feel offended unless, you really look for a reason to be offended. And I think other audiences like me, I'm not Catholic. I don't go to church. But to me, this film is not a church movie. It's more a political thriller. It happens to take place in the Vatican, but it's really like I mean, I was really inspired by Alan Pakula and his movies of the 70s, the Parallax View, or The President's Men, or Coppola's Conversation, to have that kind of feeling of, being watched constantly, of paranoia, of sort of, oppression, claustrophobia, that then eventually gets lifted from you. That's the kind of movie I wanted to create, and that could take place anywhere. It could take place in Washington D.C. for all that matters.
Yeah, I was curious about any overlap with Conclave and All Quiet, which I think you kind of answered. But if you've already started another movie, you already on to your next movie already. Is that the true? You're actually either in post or pre-productions on something
Yeah,
new? Or
it's a character journey that's not too dissimilar maybe to this in terms of the inner core of the movie. It is a movie called Ballad of a Small Player that I shot in China, in Macau, with Colin Farrell and Tilda Swinton. And I'm in the edit now next door. We're
oh,
editing.
oh, nice. Oh, well, that's excellent. And also, I'm sure you've heard your name's been mentioned for Bourne, which is a big political thriller. I mean, what's kind of, I know you can't, you probably just got attached to that, but I mean, what was kind of interested in doing that? Because it's sort of a really a studio franchise at this point, which is probably your first.
Well, I mean, but it's really not clear whether I'm not doing it right
Mm,
now, and I don't know what I will do in the future. And there's a bunch of options, and I have to bring out this movie to the theater Conclave. I have to finish Ballad, which takes me until next summer,
mm,
and everything that goes beyond it is kind of beyond my comprehension. So, but Bourne is a wonderful franchise, and if there ever were, I don't have it, but if there ever were an element that hasn't been told yet,
mm.
and a good reason to bring it back, and for me to have the feeling I can make the movie as good as Paul Greengrass did, because he did great films,
Oh, sure.
and that is a very high hurdle to jump over. And you really need a new agenda of bringing that back, because otherwise there's really no reason. You can only bring it back if you have something new to tell, something new to add. And that would also be, probably Matt Damon's only reason to come back. He's not going to need money. He's not going to, need to make this. He needs, if he can have an inner journey that, just like Rafe, Rafe had a wonderful inner journey to play on Conclave. And if an actor finds that to play, then that's a wonderful challenge. And if you can't find it, then better not make a movie like that.
Yeah. Fair. That's great answer. I mean, I'm a fan of your last two movies, and I'm looking forward to the next one. And if it happens, I'd be very happy too. I'd be happy to see you in that world for sure. So, um, yeah, great seeing you again,
Oh,
man. It's
thank
great.
you.
Congratulations on making another terrific film. I'll definitely be seeing it again in theaters when it opens next weekend. So, uh,
Oh, great.
I love to see
It's
with
next
audiences.
weekend already. That's so exciting.
It's so exciting, and a wide release too. Focus is giving it a wide release. They really have confidence in it, which is
No, it's just wonderful,
interesting.
to have that confidence of a theatrical distributor behind you is a great feeling.